My role is to introduce the presenters today, and presenting today will be Kent Mower. He's a field specialist, Coalition to Support Iowa Farmers. Kent serves as a field specialist for the Coalition to Support Iowa Farmers. He was appointed to this position in July 2010. Coalition was launched in 2004 and assists farm families in growing their livestock farms responsibly and successfully. It's a nonpartisan, not-for-profit initiative created by farmers to serve farmers and involves 8 Iowa farm and commodity organizations. There's some more details here, but we'd like to stay on track. I just skipped down that to let you know that Kent grew up on a diversified crop and livestock farm near Perry and holds a degree in animal science from you guys don't say that here in Iowa, the Iowa State University, but we do that in Ohio.
It's okay.
It's okay?
It's okay.
It's still official Iowa State? Okay. And he and his family reside near Madrid? Madrid, okay. It's a Buckeye, so not along here, okay. Also presenting will be, Dave, how do you pronounce your last name? Struthers. He's president of Struthers Farm, a family farm operation that has a fair-to-finish operation near Collins in Story County. Dave and his family currently have 300 sows and utilize both confinement and hoop buildings. He has been farming since high school graduation in 1985 and at one time maintained a 1,000-head sow herd. So they're going to kind of share in this whole presentation, and with that I'd like to introduce, please help me welcome Kent to the microphone.
Thank you, and good morning. First off, we'd just like to thank National Pork Producers for allowing us to be here today to talk about this topic. We were asked by National Pork to give this presentation because of the increase of vandalism and theft in livestock and facilities over the last 10 to 12 months. So we'll just get right into it then. I'll give a little bit of background of what we've seen here in Iowa. In August of 2010, 4 sites in Sac County and Calhoun County. Can everybody hear me okay? Have I got this adjusted right? Okay. The LP tanks were actually shot at with a high-caliber, high-powered rifle. And you can see a picture, a blow-up of the picture there. No explosions occurred or anything like that, but it was a very dangerous situation. That had also happened in 2009. 12 sites in Sac and Calhoun County had this happen. And some of the sites that happened in 2010 also, it happened in 2009, so there's kind of a pattern. What we saw in late last year, November, December time frame, in 2010, there were sites vandalized in Brainerd, Chickasaw, and Fayette County, all about the last part of November. 5 hog sites and 1 turkey site were vandalized. All the sites were remote sites. They didn't have a lot of security, and there was a lot of damage. So many of the photos that we'll see today, oops, let me go back here. Many of the photos that we see here today are going to be talking about Northeast Iowa. There's some unique things about what happened there, and we want to visit a lot about it. So, in 2011, hog barns have been vandalized in Kossuth, Palo Alto, and Butler counties, as well as we've seen an increase in theft. In January, March of this year, hogs have been stolen in Plymouth, Mitchell, and Hardin County. More recently, in May, in Cherokee County, 65 hogs were stolen from a confinement building. The unique thing is they're not taking all the pigs out of one pen. They're going through and taking a pig out of this pen and then going down a few pens, taking another pig. It's not very evident to the managers of those barns. And then when they get to the end of the turn, they start to count pigs. We're short. Why are we short? How did it happen? It's not very noticeable to farm. The buildings were not locked. Also in Sioux County, about 100 purebred Berkshires were stolen from a hoop barn over a 3-week period. The hogs had no notches or tattoos other than their color markings. They really weren't identifiable. Again, the gates were not locked. So what we'll do here is, I guess, first thing when we talk about this subject, who can be the vandals? We want to try to identify that. To start off with, they could be disgruntled employees. They can be anywhere from the young guy that you had power washing the site, maybe in high school, that didn't like power washing, to a farm employee that had been dismissed that really wasn't fulfilling his duties. One example that I can really think of that hits home is in Adair County a few years ago at a feedlot, a beef feedlot. An individual had actually poisoned some cattle. He threw a bag of insecticide in the feeder wagon that was empty. Nobody thought to look in the wagon the next morning. They filled it up with feed, mixed it, and they killed almost 100 head of cattle by poison. So that's what disgruntled employees can do to you. They know they're out your operation, they can do you a lot of damage. Also, upset neighbors or community members can be vandals or thieves. They may not like modern livestock agriculture, they don't like you build a confinement barn, and they're going to even the score against you. So, obviously activists can play a role as well. We haven't heard a lot about activists in Iowa on a large scale. I mean, back in the late 90s, ALF, the Animal Liberation Front, was vandalizing some farms more in the eastern part of the United States, but I think they kind of got wise that they're bringing a lot of attention to themselves. But their FBI does have evidence that ALF takes its directions from PETA, so it's always kind of in the back of your mind that could happen. And then too, just local people, they can be more of the thieves. Those local folks know your routine. They know when they can be at those buildings and maybe cause some damage or steal some livestock. So what can they vandalize in a hog barn? Well, first and foremost is the office. There's a lot of damage can be done there. I mean, in a modern hog barn, there's a lot of equipment there. Computers, fax machines, refrigerators, microwaves, washing machines. What we've seen in the past that vandals that actually plug drains in the offices, try to flood them, or start fires with paperwork. Anything they can get their hands on, and they can do a lot of damage because the equipment there is costly. They also will go after your records. Again, we talked about starting fires. They'll use these records to start a fire. Or they may try to destroy your computer. And if that's the only copy of those records that you had, those records are gone. If you're working maybe as a contract grower, that could be very, it can hit you hard as far as the cost. You know, trying to have those conversations with integrators. What had happened in the past, how did the pigs perform? If those records are gone, they're gone. So we recommend that you back up your files if you're using computers. You know, have another copy of those files electronically somewhere else. Feed systems. What we've seen in Northeast Iowa in November of 2010, they really went after the feed systems as well. They removed agitation balls out of the bulk bins to try to cause a farmer, some frustration down the road. They took hammers to deflect auger tubes, tried to destroy them, cause cracks in them, and then you wouldn't know it until you started the feed system up if you didn't inspect it. They actually filled the bulk bins with water. They took garden hoses, climbed to the top of the bins, stuck garden hoses in the bins, and filled the bin up with water. They removed feed tubes, the tubes with the switches on them, so that they dumped all the feed in the pits. And at $8 corn, that's not a good scenario either. These folks up in Northeast Iowa, again, were fairly smart. They knew how a hog barn operated, and they went after their alarm systems, disabled them. They took the phones off the hook or disabled the alarms, cut the phone cords, disabled the power to the alarms. So these people may know what they're doing when they come in and vandalize. A lot of people think it might be just high school kids, but especially in Northeast Iowa, they had prior knowledge of how a hog barn worked. So we've seen a little bit of everything at the coalition. Also, they went after electrical systems in Northeast Iowa especially. They're trying to indirectly cause harm to the animals by disabling the electrical service to the buildings. They did a number of things. They disabled the power at the breaker boxes. They know which breaker box switches to go after to disable the whole barn. They tried to damage the main feed lines coming into the breaker boxes. I don't know how they did that exactly without getting themselves electrocuted, but they managed to do it. They disabled the power lines into the rooms where the hogs were at. They go into each room and tried to disable the power as well. In the picture here, they actually took a shotgun and shot at the transformer. But they should have kept going. It looks like they only damaged one. It was a three-phase system, so they still had some partial power, but it did cause some damage to the hog barn. They even went as far as to disable the power lines at the generator rooms too on some sow farms up there. They went after vaccine and antibiotic bottles. They tried to destroy the bottles of the refrigerators the bottles were in, or they even went after water medications, tried to throw them out on the floor and flood the office floor or the warehouse floor and damage them as well. Very costly. Vaccines are 20, 30 bucks a bottle. I mean, that really adds up to the farm. Equipment. This is where they did some real damage as well. This particular picture here, there was a skid loader that was parked outside of the building. The key was in it. They wanted in, so they used the skid loader to gain access. There's an overhead garage door that's hanging there that they damaged with the skid loader. As well, if you leave keys in farm equipment that's parked around the sites, they would take the keys, break them off in the ignitions, or just take the keys and pitch them in the field. They were just trying to cause any havoc for this farmer, or many of these farmers, not just one farmer. There's multiple farmers as well in the three-county area in northeast Iowa. They ripped GPS equipment out of tractors and manure spreader trucks, broke out windows, tried to damage the equipment by putting foreign material in either the fuel or the hydraulic system, damaged the electrical systems of the equipment, cut hydraulic lines, damaged tires, stole the components out of the tractors or the manure spreading trucks, GPS units, radios, two-way radios, CBs, as well as damage equipment on the hog barns, curtains, fans, brooder heaters, heat lamps, power washers. Got to be kind of costly at these sites. Finally, they went after supplies as well. In the picture here, you see mice and rat poison out on the ground, wet, can't be used anymore. Other building supplies they damaged. So what can you do to make your farm more secure? It's a little bit difficult to understand why someone would want to do this to your livestock farm, but it does happen for various reasons. And the main thing I can say to you is don't make it easy for them, first and foremost. So in many of the cases of these vandalisms, barns were left unlocked, farm equipment, the keys were left in. They thought it was in a remote rural area, that it was safe, but these sites were isolated. The people in that area that were doing the vandalism knew the schedule of the farmer, knew when they could go to those sites. So it was somewhat easy for them. And then sometimes, and you will see some pictures here too, they had to work a little bit to get in the sites, but they got in anyway. So, you know, be seen at, I guess the point is be seen at these sites on a varying rotation. If you go there first thing in the morning at 7 o'clock to do chores, that's great. But if you think you have maybe some people that are showing up and watching your site, then vary your routine. Show up at the site again another time during the day, show up at night, vary your routine. Don't be there all at the same time, every day. Also, we're going to get back to document the details about your former employees. They may be the problem. Know the details, especially if there's a dispute. Why someone was let go, how it ended up, have their contact information if you can still retain it. So. As well, be sure to keep your machinery and vehicles at a secure building or at a minimum a well-lit area on a remote site if you have to leave it there. If you can keep from it, don't leave it there. If it's a remote hog site, take the tractors or the manure handling equipment somewhere else where it's more secure, where somebody lives, even if it's up to a neighbor's house. Always take the keys out of the equipment and lock it. One thing I like too, the Iowa Crime Prevention Association recommended is putting disabling switches on the positive cable of the batteries hid up underneath the equipment. And I've had experience with this as well, and they really work nice. It's a switch that's hid, maybe up in the frame of the tractor or the manure handling equipment, something like that, where you only know where it's at. You have to turn that on, and then you put the key in, you can start the equipment. But if the disabling switch is off, you put the key in, nothing happens because there's no current going to the key switch. So that's just an extra source of protection for farm equipment. Also, take snapshots of your office and your warehouse and the content of both of those. Just like we hear some people say, if there's a fire, you should have photos of what's in your house and the content. Same goes for your livestock farm, your hog barn. Keep all doors locked when not in use. And I know that can be kind of a challenge, especially if you're contract feeding and you have other folks coming in and out of your building on a routine basis. Maybe an individual from the pig owner, serviceman coming in, or possibly even a vaccination crew, a loadout crew, whatever. But try to have communications with them, and if you feel comfortable, give them copies of the keys. But don't leave the doors unlocked. That's a big thing, and that happens a lot. It's easy to do. You get in the routine, doors are unlocked, and then this is when things happen. Be sure to lock both the inside and outside doors. It's easy to lock the outside doors, remember that. But also think about vandals. They can go through a curtain wall in the hog barn, get in and come back through the hog barn rooms and get into the office and the warehouse again too. So have that in the door that goes from the office to the hog barns, if that's the way the barn's situated, if it's connected, have those locked as well. Have steel doors and door frames. Make sure you have deadbolt locks on these doors. And if it's a door with a window, have 2 locks. A regular door lock that's a deadbolt, as well as the one that takes a key. It's unfortunate, if vandals are given enough time and have the right equipment, they're probably going to get in anyway. In the picture here, you see that steel door, they pried it open, but they had to take a big steel bar to work at it. So it may not deter them, but steel doors and deadbolt locks can sure slow them down. Especially thieves, if they think they have a limited time period when they can come in and maybe steal hogs and they've got locked doors. If they see both these deadbolt locks, it may deter them. So vandals, it may be a different story. They may get in anyway, but at least you can try to slow them down a little bit or make them work for it. So we're getting a little bit about equipment, security equipment. The picture up there, what do you think that is? What's that look like to you? Anybody got an idea?
Motion equalizer.
Right?
Camera?
Correct. It's both. That is a patrol security light camera from QC Supply. It mounts just like a regular yard light. It mounts on the junction block. It does not take any additional hardware or cabling. It's a self-contained unit. It has a little SD card. It actually snaps a photo when it senses motion within the range of its parameters. It takes photos and it timestamps it. And that camera right there sells for $139. That's pretty cheap insurance. What's that look like mounted on a hog barn? There's an example of a producer in Iowa that has it. He has several sites. This is actually mounted on his office, and it points towards the loadout area. When our assistant field specialist, Rita Cook, took a photo of this, she had no idea, it was during the day, that the camera took a photo back of her. We worked with this producer, had them check it. Yep, it took a picture of her. Clear as day. This actual producer, too, has had some problems with theft out of one of his buildings. They used this camera/light to catch the individual that was stealing hogs. It was actually an employee. It took photos of the employee backing the trailer up to the loading chute, and then the employee, for some reason, looked right at the light and camera, and they got his face, clear as day. And it showed him also loading pigs. It would sense the motion from the guys over at the loading chute, moving back and forth and put pigs on the trailer. So they do work. They seem cheap and inexpensive, but they do work. So you just have to check them a little bit, but make sure they're always working. Make that a routine part of your building inspection, but you'll have that with anything. But at the minimum, if you don't want to do that route, at the minimum, install security lighting where the lights operate on switches or sensors. So maybe they're not on all the time, but if a vandal walks up and the light pops on, that might be enough to deter them. Yeah, they can shoot the lights out, and that's possible. I mean, that's just a fact of life. But make it a little bit more difficult for them. Don't make it easy. Don't have the site not well lit. That's just easy for vandals to come on. Again, cameras and surveillance systems, we talked a little bit about that. Outdoor cameras work great for vehicle identification, but if they're placed properly, they can also work well for identifying individuals. Definitely indoor cameras at points of entry are very successful at identifying persons, and they're cheap insurance. At $139, Dave, I suppose your deductible, what is it on a hog barn? More than that, isn't it? Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of people will think you gotta have this fancy elaborate security system, monitors and cameras, and those do run into money. They'll be $1,000 to $3,000. But something like this is another version of it right here. This is from Northern Tools. That particular light/camera is $150. So, and that one actually takes video footage. I imagine it fills up the SD card faster. But if you are having a problem, you might want to switch it over to that mode for a short period of time. But if you have something like this, and it takes a snapshot, and your building is vandalized or you have theft, this kind of information to law enforcement can cut the time it takes to capture the individual in half. We got that information from a sheriff deputy in Fayette County. You know, he's really wishes people would embrace these cameras more. So I think these cheaper alternatives are great, especially if you've got multiple locations. The other thing to put in place as well is an emergency action plan. It's a list of contacts, phone numbers of various important individuals, veterinarians, neighbors that you get along with, local emergency management offices, insurance agents, fire departments, sheriff's offices, other employees or owners of the buildings as well. So if you have an employee that's taking care of a site, he comes upon a vandalism, if you have this information in place, he'll know how to handle the situation better. And you won't have to look up all the numbers for him. He can do it himself. Also have a backup plan for the electricity and the feed and the water as part of this emergency action plan. Make sure that you have identification of the animals. We've seen a lot of hogs that maybe don't have notches or tattoos or ear tags. So if they are stolen or they are damaged in vandalism, you know which ones it is and you can report that to your insurance. Register your premise. What we're talking about here, I know there's a lot of different variations of registering your premise, but we're talking about doing it with local law enforcement, the county within where the site's at. Get that identification information to your local law enforcement. That can help them better report and have action on the site if anything happens. Share your plan with family. If you have neighbors that you like and can work with, share it with them as well as employees. And post the plan at any doorway that may be a point of entry so that the employees have it to access very readily. The other thing about emergency action plan, it works well too in weather events. Just recently here in Iowa, some hog barns up in Pocahontas County were hit by tornadoes. There wasn't much left of the sites. And basically what was left is anything bolted down to cement and the offices. So if the employees would have had that type of plan, they would better know how to maybe like contact trucks to help them get the hogs moved, or at least the serviceman if it's a contract grower situation to get some action started so they get those pigs moved to safety. When it comes to being having preventative measures, be vigilant in your security precautions. Limit access to your farm by gating if that's appropriate for your site. I know some guys will kick on that, say it's too much work to shut the gate, but if it's a remote site, it may be very beneficial. I was talking to one producer earlier this morning. He's got a site about a quarter mile off the road, and he stores diesel there for the generator, and he had quite a time diesel being stolen. He says people were watching when I was there. When I had started the incinerator, they knew I left. They'd go back and take diesel fuel. He said we'd have 300 gallon that wouldn't last a week. So people do watch these sites. They really do. If you feel like it, fence the perimeter off. Even if you don't have a gate, at least they have to go in and out one spot, and that may deter them. Or put trees around the site. That may also deter them. A lot of these sites are sitting next to cornfields. And even if there's a gate, if it's not fenced, you know, they could drive through the cornfield, get to the back of the site, vandals, for example, and do some damage still not seen. So think about how this site looks to the criminal or the vandal, and try to outthink them. And you might want to be involved in neighborhood watch. Again, if you got a neighbor you get along with, if he sees any suspicious activity, make sure he has your phone number. He can call you and let you know. And a lot of times that happens. Post signs at the farm entrances that indicate no unauthorized individuals should be at the site or stay off the farm unless given permission to enter. You might want to post a phone number for your farm office. So if somebody does show up or someone sees something that's not right, maybe they saw somebody casing the place out, they could call your number and let you know. Mark all property with an operation identification number. This is a number you would actually get from law enforcement in the county where the facility's at. And what it is, it's a 10-digit number that they put on a stamp. So if you have a lot of tools, that maybe like at a sow farm, you've got a shop that goes with the farm, it's a remote location, you have a lot of tools, you take that stamp that number into the tool. That way if those tools get stolen, law enforcement can retrieve them and know whose tools they are. If it has that number, they'll trace it back. Post a sign if you do this that all property has been marked with an operation ID number. Make sure, again, livestock, tattoos, or some form of marks in case livestock are damaged or stolen. And sometimes we see in Iowa too that there will be grain stored with the hog site at a remote location. If you're worried about grain being stolen, just a sidebar note, you can put this ID number on confetti and sprinkle it in the corn. And that way, if they're trying to sell the corn again and at the elevator they see this number, they may report it. We've noticed vandalisms happen in some cases, and it's not been reported until later. It may not get reported for a few weeks until another case of vandalism in the same area made the newspapers. And then all these other cases come forward and it was a much bigger scenario than what we originally thought. Report minor incidences. They may be trying to test your system to see if you have any security or not. If you have security cameras and you see something odd going on, you'll go back and check and then let law enforcement know. If you see incidences that are testing the system, increase your security. Make sure that your doors are all locked, your yard lights are working, talk to the neighbor, let them know, let people know what's going on. If you come in contact with criminals, vandalizing or stealing something at one of these sites, do not confront them. What we saw in Northeast Iowa, and some incidents, these folks were carrying firearms, and you don't want to be on the wrong end of shotgun. It wouldn't be pleasant. I don't want to end up like an electrical transformer. If you have vandalism and you're in the state of Iowa, you can contact us at the coalition at 800-932-2436, or if you're in another state, contact your local commodity organizations like your pork producers. First off, what we'll do is draw media attention to it and let other producers know this may be going on. It will increase awareness throughout the ag community. People may be more aware of what's going on in their surroundings. If vehicles are setting up the road a quarter mile from the site watching, the neighbor may stop if he knows about it and say, hey, what are you doing? Why are you here? Or he may take the license plate number down and report it to law enforcement. Also, we can help put together a reward. In the cases in Northeast Iowa, we offered a $7,500 reward. And let's face it, money gets people talking. And if somebody overhears something, they may report it to law enforcement, and it may lead to arrest and conviction. Actually, in the cases in Northeast Iowa, we haven't been able to get a lot out to law enforcement, but they do have some suspects finally, and that happened last November. So rewards do work, and media attention does work. If you get contacted by the media, if a television reporter or a newspaper reporter contacts you, first off, know the subject that you want to talk about. Be polite, professional, and courteous, and helpful. And know how you feel about the subject. Don't talk to a reporter when you're angry or upset about the situation. Yeah, that may sound good, but it may give the wrong impression to the average person that's watching the newscast or reading the newspaper. You want to think about how the average consumer may perceive your reactions to the situation. And then always repeat your message. If a television reporter comes out and does a half-hour interview, you may only get 8 or 10 seconds out of that whole interview that will show up in the report, or the news broadcast, or the newspaper. So always repeat your message. The reporter may try to take you down a different road or talk about other things like animal welfare or confinement buildings, but always try to bring that topic back to what you want to convey. If a reporter wants to come out, make sure your farm condition would be agreeable to the average consumer. If you have a compost pile that maybe doesn't have enough compost on it, get that covered up. Make sure the farm looks nice. You're portraying modern agriculture if you're being interviewed. And you want to think about how the average consumer would perceive that. Also take time to prepare for the interview. Reporters are great at calling you up and going, we want an interview right now. I've had that happen to me. You don't have to give an interview right now. Just tell them you're in the middle of the project or you're visiting with law enforcement and you'll get back to them, maybe in the afternoon. Take time to prepare. If you're in the state of Iowa, you can contact the coalition. We'll help you put together maybe the statements that you want to make to the media. If you're outside of Iowa, call, again, your local commodity groups. They may be able to assist you. Again, keep your emotions in check and stick to the facts. Don't place blame and don't make possible scenarios. That does no good. Just stick to the facts. What did happen? You describe your situation, you're concerned for your family, for your animals, for your people's safety, and direct legal questions to the proper authorities. Don't be a lawyer, because media will twist that. You want to stick to the topic at hand, is what happened on your farm, what were the details, what were the facts. Because what you don't want to happen, this actually happened. This happened to Dave Struthers. The sheriff made some possible scenarios, and look what ended up in the Des Moines Register, statewide paper. Sheriff ties hog carnage to feud. There was no feud with neighbor, but that's what the sheriff, said was a possible scenario, and that's what the headline was. And Dave's going to talk a little more about that later. We're just going to visit a little bit about the coalition, too, if you're not familiar with us. It's truly a team effort. We're made up by the 8 major agricultural commodity groups in the state of Iowa, including corn and soybeans. And the reason corn and soybeans are involved as well is I know livestock agriculture is great for the state of Iowa, and livestock agriculture is their biggest customer. So it's a great joint venture by all these commodity groups. What we do at the coalition is we help interpret rules and regulations, select good locations for new farms, improve relations between farmers and neighbors, and help implement best management practices on farms. What we don't do is, we're not a government agency. We don't enforce or fine. We don't lobby. We don't develop policy, government policy. We don't maintain a membership base, and we don't charge for our services. But what we are for livestock farmers in the state of Iowa is a third-party resource to help keep their farms in regulatory compliance and help them be successful and responsible. And why it matters, because we want young people to be on farms. We want young farm families back in these rural communities. That's just key to our economic success in the state of Iowa. Some of the resources we used for my part of the presentation today was the Iowa Crime Prevention Center, the National Sheriff Association, as well as a lot of the livestock producers that we've dealt with, like Dave. We've gained a lot of information from that. Iowa State University Farm Bureau. And I'd also like to thank Rita Cook, our Assistant Field Specialist at the Coalition. She helped me pull all this information together today.